Welcome to Soul of Travel, Women's Wisdom and Mindful Travel. I'm your host, Christine Weinbrenner-Eyrich. Each week, you'll hear me having soulful conversations with women who are tourism professionals, trailblazers, and community leaders around the world. They share their personal and professional journeys to inspire you, and their stories teach you how to become a more conscious traveler, live life aligned with your values, and create a positive impact. We are thought leaders, action takers, and heart-centered change makers, and this is the soul of travel. Robyn DeVoe caught the travel bug at a young age while exploring Europe with her parents, and was officially hooked while studying ecotourism in Fiji and Australia. Her professional career in the travel industry over the last decade has taken her to places near and far, from soaring over Arches National Park in a Cessna to snorkeling with sea turtles in the Galápagos. Travel has given her new perspectives, instilled in her a sense of gratitude and wonder, and overall shaped her into an independent and empowered woman. Today, Robyn finds true fulfillment in being able to help her clients unlock the trip of their dreams and ultimately spreading appreciation and support for communities and environments around the world through responsible tourism. When Robyn is not crafting itineraries, you can find her wearing her health coaching hat, helping her clients live their best lives, while she does the same, recreating in the mountains around her home in Bozeman, Montana. In our conversation, Robyn and I meet at the intersection of wellness and travel, and explore our passion for wellness, healing, and travel design. Robyn and I talk about reframing travel by asking why we travel over where we travel. She talks about how Explorer X offers a destination unknown experience that gets to the heart of understanding why a client is traveling and has them focusing more on the journey than the destination. She shares about being a functional medicine certified health coach and the ways that overlaps with travel design. I take a minute to share about my Ayurveda studies and the coaching I'm excited to offer soon, bringing Ayurveda and travel together. She also shares about being a dream weaver and what that means to her. I ask each of my guests to describe themselves in 3 words. Robyn shares that she is a wellness coach, travel designer, and dream weaver. There's that term again, so stick around to the end to hear more. Join me now for my soulful conversation with Robyn DeVoe. Welcome to Soul of Travel podcast. I'm Christine, and today I am excited to be joined by Robyn DeVoe, who works with Explorer X, and we are going to kind of dive into the intersection of well-being and travel today. We have so many possible topics, so it'll be really interesting to see what journey that this takes, even in our conversation. So welcome, first off, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you for having me on. It's just an honor to have been invited. And listening to all the other guests that you've had on, I just always come away feeling so inspired. And so I just hope that I can live up to that high bar that they've all set before
Yeah,
me.
I'm sure that you can, because our own independent conversations have been really great for me. So I feel like we have a lot that we can tap into. But before we get fully diving into the conversation, I'd love to just turn it over to you to introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do in the space of travel right now.
Sure. So my name is Robyn DeVoe. I am an international custom travel designer. I work for the company Explorer X, and I have been in the travel industry for a little over 10 years now. This was just my 10-year mark this year. And so our company is based in the Seattle area loosely, and then we have team members all across the states and around the world.
Well,
It'll be really good because we've been able to work together in lots of different ways. And just as we were preparing for this conversation, I was looking back at our notes, and we hadn't talked for several years, like in this context, but I was like, but I feel like we've talked all the time, or we are at least adjacent to each other often. So it feels weird that it
Yes.
had been that long of time. But anyway,
Yes,
I
agreed.
really am just really grateful for you being here to share your wisdom with us. What I would love to start with is just learning from you when you first began to travel and when you kind of first fell in love with travel. I don't know if you traveled as a child or when that started to come online for you.
Yes. Well, I was lucky to have done some traveling in childhood with my family. Um, I feel like travel was just, it's just in my blood from the start. My grandparents on both sides of my family um, also traveled quite a bit. And so I feel like it's just something that I um, grew up learning about from them and then through my parents. And it just was, as an only child as well, I had, I think, the opportunity to go with my parents to many places and experience the world. And was very grateful for that growing up and looking back on that. And yeah, so I think that's kind of what inspired my love of travel and then getting into it professionally um, over time.
Yeah. And if I remember right, you studied ecotourism abroad. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that and how that has begun to shape what travel means to you?
Yes. So I had the opportunity to study abroad while I was in college. I went to Australia and spent a little bit of time in Fiji as well while I was out there. And the focus was on ecotourism, and that was my first real exposure to how to work in travel professionally and what that could look like as a career and the blend of travel and doing so with the environment and responsibility in mind. And so that also kind of had started me in that direction as well. I was studying business management at the time, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I love travel, I love the environment, and that it was kind of the direction that I was going to be headed.
Yeah. I think it's interesting kind of how travel finds people. That's always one of my favorite things to see because I feel like it's one of those things where like if you imagine it as its own entity, like I feel like it just was like, okay, you, thank you. I know you don't know why you're here, but you're here.
Yeah.
And for me, like I didn't travel a lot when I was growing up, but I was super curious about the world. I read a ton. I came from a really small community in Montana, but I was, obsessed with like National Geographic and oh gosh, now I can't. Was it the Wild Kingdom or something like that? There was like just all these shows that obviously the world existed outside of my like 2000 people and two channels of information that I had. And like I didn't really know about being in the industry, but I knew I kind of wanted to be in the world. And then I studied a million things. I could never decide what I wanted to be, but eventually landing in sociology, I took a class that was, I think it was the sociology of ecology, which even today I can't even tell you what that was supposed to mean. But I remember sitting, and this was like so my experience, but sitting outside in the Oval with this professor taking this class, and he was just really talking about the intersection of humans and the environment, really, was what we were talking about. And I had already been kind of curious about travel. And so I was looking at things with that lens a little bit. And it was also this moment where I realized that social justice and humans and travel and environment could all kind of stack up. Like I feel like I had all these things I was interested in, but I didn't know how they fit together. And that class, besides being the moment where he was describing what a feminist was, and I was like, "Oh, I think I'm a feminist," like the own moment, because again, like this rural community, that was a word that it was like the other F word kind of. Like I didn't really understand,
Yeah.
but it really felt like something I shouldn't be, which this is such a
Yes.
convenient conversation for right now. But it was
Yeah.
something where I could really see maybe what I might do out there in this bigger world. So
Hmm.
I think experiences like yours are really important where you're not sure exactly where the breadcrumbs are going yet. You just know they're starting to take you somewhere.
Right. Yeah, it's just following each little breadcrumb is like a new point of interest. And the curiosity, I mean, I think we're kind of kindred spirits in this way because I feel like, and so many of us in the travel industry have this strength of curiosity. And I think that is a main driver of what gets us into this industry in the first place. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
can completely relate.
Yeah. And I think curiosity is such a beautiful word for both of the ways that we try to shape experiences, because I feel like also maybe with curiosity paired with being open and, um,
Hmm.
wanting to learn more, like it just kind of keeps this ability to engage and receive and like create your own understanding. Like I think those are all really important elements in, and we'll get there, I'm sure, within this conversation, but why those are such important values, I think, in travel. And I think one of the things I would love to first start out talking with you about, maybe because of this direction, is talking about understanding why we travel. And I think that that is very much ingrained in the work that you do and the work that I do, whether subtly or in front, depending on who you're working with, but understanding why we travel and not focusing on really where, but why. It it allows travelers to engage in such a different way. So I'd love to hear from you maybe what that has looked like in your own life, if you've put that into practice, and then how you use that in terms of designing trips and even educating travelers.
Yes. Well, I love the way that you framed it as far as it's not about the where, but the why. And I think that gets really to the heart of what travel is all about. Travel, the why of travel for me, um, I think is rooted in several different things. Um, I think it has to do with a sense of connection to others around the world. I think it has to do with an appreciation for our natural world and the different environments and ecosystems. I think it also has to do with shaking up the routine a little bit and learning and realigning and shifting our mindsets. Um, and that's, there's so much that goes into that. And we focus on that quite a bit at Explorer X. And I would also just say, just kind of realigning with personally with a sense of confidence and independence that I kind of reconnect with each time I travel as well. So there's a lot to unpack within each one of these things, but that's kind of for me. That is the why of travel for me.
Mhm. What does the conversation look like for you when, because I know at ExploreX you're always trying to get travelers to just go a little deeper. So
Hmm.
what does that look like? Or how do you encourage that for people that maybe didn't come to you with that in mind? Maybe they just
Hmm.
felt aligned with how you talk about travel, but they hadn't really asked that of themselves. How do you guide them towards that?
Yeah, great questions. Most people, I would say most that come to us are Just coming to us for an amazing trip and not for the inner journey side that comes along with it. So I guess I'll back up and say at Explorer X, we look at travel as um, a sort of a vehicle to connect not only to the world around us, but to ourselves on a deeper level. And we encourage our travelers to engage with the experience on a deeper level. So, throughout the travel design, throughout the trip itself, and then after our clients come home, we have little exercises and prompts and things for them to do along the way to, again, just engage with it on a deeper level and maybe unearth some things that they're learning along the way. And there's different kind of levels that people can engage with this depending on how interested they are and how open they are to that. But we can start as small as just encouraging a mindful moment every day while they're on their trip, to deeper work and reflections like feel that we have different worksheets and things that they can do to reflect on who they've met, what they're learning, how they want travel to perhaps have an impact on them, and how they want to come out of this experience, perhaps a different person in some ways, or feel differently about their lives in some ways. And things that they would like to maybe continue doing or change about their lives moving forward as a result of what they experienced in travel. So we kind of offer little tidbits along the way and see how interested people are in engaging with it, and then we can give them more if they would like. And oftentimes, we find that when we expose people to these sorts of things, they get more curious. They haven't thought about travel in this way before, and they generally all engage with it on some level, some more than others. And it's been very cool to witness that, for people who, especially who weren't really open to that, or perhaps weren't really aware of that side of travel before.
Yeah, I think it's really amazing to, like you said, just kind of start the conversation and see where it goes. Because I know for you and I, this feels like such a place of comfort in how we think and speak about travel. And so we can forget that this is not a place that a lot of people have spent time or have been even exposed to. If they, are getting most of their information about travel from the mainstream travel market, then this isn't something that they are probably thinking about. And like the simplest questions can kind of like be this catalyst for awareness, like you were saying. I remember a few years ago, I led a trip where we spent 3 months preparing to hike a 14er here in Colorado. And during the 3 months prior to that, we did like this mental, physical, spiritual coaching to kind of bring the group together, but then prepare for this journey, which is, needs all of those parts and pieces for you to be able to have it be successful. And one of the first things I did was just ask people why they were signed up for this experience, what led them here. And one of the women had just said, I was working on this trip with another woman who's an adventure coach, and she knew her, and she was like, I just thought, well, she's doing it, it's probably cool. That's it. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to all, spend a little time talking about this, and I'm going to come back to you. And so everybody kind of shared. And then I got back to her and she was like, oh my gosh, I would have never thought about this. I would have never thought about this if you hadn't asked. And now I see all the reasons why I actually said yes. And then she was just like moved to tears, and everything about how she put herself into the experience for the next 3 months and then hiking like really changed just from like, I mean, that wasn't even a hard question, right? That was just like,
Yeah.
why did you sign up for this trip? That's pretty easy. We should ask ourselves that, but
Yeah.
many people don't. Like we consume travel like we consume pizza or whatever, right? We just like, that looks good, I'll order it.
Right.
and and that, to no fault of any traveler, like that's also how we've been taught to consume travel. But I think it's so cool when you see someone realize that this can mean more, and that it doesn't have to be people who are setting out on, like there's this kind of romanticized version of transformational travel, or like intentional travel, or these epic travel experiences where people think only a few people can have those type of experiences. Like they're just too far reaching, or you have to be a certain kind of person to tap into that. But I think, like probably what you've seen as well, is it just takes a little tiny shift to create a huge change in the perception of what travel can be in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you have to give people the opportunity. Um, it just, lay it out in front of them, be like, hey, there you could engage with it on this level, and here's what you could learn about yourself and in the process. And if you just put it out there, it's like you're saying, it's something that people wouldn't otherwise consider, but could be interested in. So we always, lead with that and just kind of take their temperature on it, and, never forcing anything, but always seeing that they do engage with it as they go along. So,
Yeah. And I think it's something hard to kind of not geek out on, especially for us.
right.
And I know, Michael, that that you work with at ExploreX, we spent a lot of time just being super excited about what this can be, but
Mm-hmm.
also, like you said, kind of taking people's temperature and understanding where they're
Yes.
at. But it's really can be hard, because you're like, I know this is so good. Like, I really want you to say yes to this, like
I know.
in the worst way.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And I mean, we give them plenty of opportunities to say yes along the way. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Because we are so excited about it, and we have all these really cool tools and things for them to do along the way.
Hey, listeners, it's Christine, and I hope you know by now that when I jump in to quickly share during our sacred time for conversation, it's because I'm really excited to share about an aligned brand or offer. These are companies or organizations that speak to me, and I know they will speak to you too. This share is no exception. I am happy to talk to you about our January partnership with ExplorerX. However, this relationship extends way beyond this month. In fact, ExplorerX founder Michael Bennett and I have been meeting for our own soulful conversations nearly every month for the past 4 years. I learned about ExplorerX when I took the Transformational Travel Council's travel design course in 2020, and I pretty much geeked out when I read Michael's doctoral thesis. Honestly, as silly as it might sound, I may have cried. And this was because it was one of the first times I remember thinking that this was a place where people think about the potential of travel like I do. And I only share this backstory because this connection is important to understanding why I want to share their work with you. Since then, we have brainstormed, theorized, book clubbed, strategized, and cheered each other on in our businesses. I have long loved the work that Michael and his team do, and have spent time listening to their podcast and connecting with one of his designers, Robyn. All the while observing their passion and learning about their unique approach to travel, understanding how they strive to not only design trips, but to design journeys. Journeys that allow their travelers deep and meaningful connections to destinations, as well as with their travel companions and themselves. Then, last year, ExplorerX became one of my clients, and I had the opportunity to meet with several ExploreX travelers, and I created podcast-style materials for them to share to tell their story of their business in long and short-form content. And with this much backstory, it was a real honor to talk to their travelers and hear it straight from the people who know best what a journey with ExploreX really means. I loved it so much. These travelers are the greatest people who jumped in, open-hearted, and ready for adventure. They may or may not have been seeking personal growth and new awareness, but when it landed at their feet, in the shape of ExploreX's Mindful Travel Toolkit, they picked it up and engaged, and they agreed they were the better for it. Whether they knew where they wanted to travel, what they wanted to experience, or chose to dive into the literal unknown by selecting a destination unknown experience, I loved hearing how each guest got what they were hoping for and so much more. This is really what sets ExploreX apart. This high level of attention to detail and care, combined with their destination connections that allow for unexpected experiences, make their journeys truly life-changing. I cannot speak highly enough about the heart and passion that I know they put into crafting unique journeys for clients who are looking for once-in-a-lifetime experiences. If you want to hear more about ExploreX, or want to hear Michael and I wax poetic about the transformational power of travel, you can listen to episode 25 of the podcast. You can learn more about traveling with ExploreX at www.explorer-x.com. Make sure you tell Michael and his team I sent you. Now, let's head back over to our soulful conversation.
I want to dive in a little bit more. I know I opened the conversation by saying that we are going to look a little bit at the intersection between well-being and travel. We'll kind of set the stage about, what travel can do for you. But I know for both of us, I have been spending a lot of time studying, and we already laughed about this, but non-traditional health modalities,
Right.
healing modalities that are all the most traditional because they've existed the longest. And you, I know, are also very focused on functional medicine and health and well-being. I would love to talk to you about maybe how that influences how you think about travel or how you guide people kind of with this lens of well-being, and also like kind of get to understand how these two things overlap.
Yes. And this is my jam. I feel like I could talk about this forever. But I will kind of boil it down to a few things. Like you said, I do have an interest in functional medicine. On the side, I am also a functional medicine health coach. I have my own business, and I work with clients one-on-one to help them with behavior and lifestyle changes. So I've reflected a lot on the intersection of travel and health because these are two things that I have a very special place in my heart. And I think there is a lot of overlap between the two. And something that, I kind of self-prescribe myself travel at least once or twice a year because of how it makes me feel and what I can learn from it, and the health effects that come from traveling. So there's many different, if you think about different aspects of health, there's, of course, diet and exercise are the ones that most people default to. But there's so many others, from environment to mindset to relationships and community, meaning and purpose. All of these things have a role to play in our health and well-being. And travel really kind of taps into all of these things. And I think a few major ones stand out to me, and the first one would be stress and our nervous system. When I know personally, and I'm sure I'm not alone when I say this, when I'm home, I'm drowning in to-do lists and emails and meetings. And when I'm traveling, I am physically removed from all of that. And I think that's a requirement for me to have the space to kind of take inventory and step back and take a moment and let my body kind of recalibrate. And I notice that, and travel is also just like we were talking about earlier, it's just I'm in my comfort zone when I'm traveling, and I feel very relaxed and at ease and kind of my best self when I'm traveling. And so my stress levels are low and I'm very relaxed. And with being so stress free while I'm traveling, that has an effect on how well I'm digesting foods. Like I'm able to eat a wider variety of things while I'm traveling. And it helps me to check in with, keep my food fear, checked in with, because when I go somewhere else, I'm able to, my body's like, okay, we can handle this now. We're not in this fight or flight state. And, you're just not as rushed, you're more mindful. So I feel like that kind of has a major role to play. And on those same lines of, feeling like my best self comes out when I'm traveling. We were talking a little bit about the strength of curiosity. Travel, when we're relaxed, which for me is when I'm traveling, our strengths can come out. And we have something that I do with my clients, my coaching clients, is one of the first things I do is kind of go through and help them to suss out their what we call character strengths. And we all have this unique order of character strengths within each of us. And for me, for example, curiosity, gratitude, creativity, these are all some of my strengths that come out when I'm traveling. And travel can really bring these things out in people that perhaps they didn't know that they had. My strength in creativity, writing, I really enjoy writing when I'm traveling, journaling. And that's not something that I do on a daily back home or even think about. My love of photography comes out. So these things can kind of be sussed out through travel, and then we can think about using those strengths in our lives back home as well. So, those are a couple of big ones. I would say relationships and community is another aspect of health that is really played to through travel and fueled through travel. We learn from each other. We recognize that there are commonalities among us around the world, and this notion that we are connected to others, that we are not alone in our life's experiences, though they may be different. It creates a sense of compassion for others, and in so doing, we also gain a compassion for ourselves. And we need this compassion for ourselves in order to, if you're dealing with something with your health, like you first need a compassion and love for yourself. That's the first step on a healing journey. So being connected with others, building relationships and community, across the globe is a big one as well. And from a more physical standpoint, travel diversifies our gut microbiome. When you travel, you pick up bacteria that you haven't been exposed to before. And your immune system is strengthened because of that. You become more resilient on a physical level. I remember I I took a stool test and I brought the results in to my doctor, and she was like, wow. I only see this with people who travel a lot. And she was remarking on just the wide diversity of beneficial bacteria that I had going on in my gut. So travel, you pick up stuff when you travel, and it makes us stronger and more resilient, immune system wise too. And another thing that I think about, and I can keep rambling on for ages, but maybe I'll narrow it down to two more. Our blood sugar is usually more regulated when we're traveling. We are, generally speaking, when we're at home, we are stationary. We're not moving as much. When we're traveling, we're always walking around. We're moving from one thing to the next. We're on the move. So our blood sugar is happier. And also we aren't usually as stressed. So that also has an effect on our blood sugar. But I would say probably most important is how travel reconnects us to perhaps a sense of meaning and purpose, and provides mindset shifts. Like I said earlier, I have this space to take inventory of my life and soak up new things along the way, and kind of recalibrate. And when I travel and connect with different people around the world, time and time again, I am left with the same sort of takeaway or mindset shift. And whether it's visiting with a Maasai family in their little dark boma, or staying with a nomadic Mongolian herding family in their yurt. All these people they're so proud, they're so at peace, they're so content, and what they have is just what they need. They have their family, their close relationships, and it's really just a reminder of what's important. And that is something that always sticks with me when I travel. It's something that I know sticks with my travelers when they come back. We've had clients come back and sell their homes and move into smaller apartments. Like these experiences have huge impacts on people afterwards, and that is sort of the simplicity of what it takes to have a happy and content life, is what generally sticks with me the most.
Yeah. And I think listening to you talk, like, I can understand your travel values, and I can understand what's really healing for you when you travel, right? I can hear the things that you gravitate toward and are drawn to. And I think it'd be really interesting for those listening too, is to just check in with yourself and, like, what did Robyn say that you were like, oh yeah, that sounds good? And there was probably things that you were also like, oh, I would never want to do that, or that doesn't actually provide me that same sense of ease or comfort. Because I think it can be really easy, especially for those of us creating travel, to create travel for ourselves over and over and give it to other people. And it's not necessarily going to do the same things for them, because it might not be what they need. So I just wanted to say that, because I was like, I can really hear, and it's, again, very similar to also what I would want. So I just want to say yes, yes, yes. And I had the thought of like, wait a second, what if that isn't exactly what everybody needs? And I know, because you have a functional medicine background, like that's really like the everything of it, right? Like when you look at healthcare in the West, it's kind of this prescriptive overlay that's the same for everybody without getting to this, who are we? Why are we not healthy right now? Instead of just like, here's the symptom you have, let's treat everybody the same way. Like it's really important, the same as why are you traveling? Like,
Yes.
why are you well? Why are you unwell? Like you I think we have gotten really used to being pretty surface in a lot of situations without having to dig deeper. And then I know there's those of us that are like, the minute we're together, we're like, I've got a shovel, do you? Let's get deep. Like,
Yeah.
we're like, we're not going to
Totally.
waste any time on surface. We want to figure it all out right now. But yeah, I love that. And it was just reminding me too, just this idea of like, what if people are asking themselves, especially this healing, I loved how you were talking about that you prescribed travel, because I've, as you know, literally been thinking about that as well, because I'm studying Ayurveda. And I was thinking like, oh, like you could literally prescribe travel that's good for you, like literally good for you. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about that if you don't mind, and then we can
I would love that. And it's something, because I know you've been studying this, it's something I've been wanting to ask you about. Because, yeah, and I think this would be really interesting. And I'd love to get your perspective on Ayurveda and how you blend that with travel, because it's not something that I've seen many others doing in that
yeah.
space.
And I'll just say, like, I'm not an Ayurvedic practitioner and I'm not a pro or anything. Like, I've been studying it just for a year, so there's so much to learn. But I just, because this is my space that I always land to, and this perspective I have is this sociological lens and this travel lens, like, how can we add one more layer to it? As I was thinking about it, like you were already saying, there's these mental, physical, emotional characteristics to ourselves, and we can bring those into our travel. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, that every person has a constitution that blends those things, like physical, mental, emotional. And you're born with that kind of energy pattern. Like, this is just who you are in your homeostasis. Like, this is at your most well, that's who you are. And then throughout your life, there's all these factors that start to affect your balance and show up as like a change to your constitution. Like, as you're mentioning, stress, diet, we can think about trauma, environment, all of these will slowly just like tip you off course. And a lot of times we're not paying attention to it until it's really impacting our lives and having us feel really unwell. But what I was thinking about with like combining travel and Ayurveda is like having people understand their prakriti, which is that original constitution, and then you look at their vikruti, which is like how those are expressing themselves right now. Like, how are their doshas showing up? What feels out of balance? And I think people will kind of know this. They're not going to know the language and the terms, but they can kind of go back to, like, as a child, I had a lot of energy. I was really curious. I read a lot of books. I um, did sports. I did all these things. And so then you might think that their dosha is pitta, because that's like someone who like digests a lot of things, like information, environment, energy. Like, they're the people that like move things through themselves well. And so then, but they're like, now I'm like sluggish and I have headaches and I don't have this energy. And so then you can look and say, okay, this is kind of where you're out of alignment. And like for me, I have had in the past few years of vata imbalance. And so for me, that means I have a lot more air in my system. And again, this is all probably kind of far out there for people, but I want to try to bring it in. But like, vata is associated with things that are like dry and light and cool and rough and crisp. And actually, people who travel can have a vata excess because plane travel and excess sugar and alcohol and stimulation can like all lead to too much of that kind of energy in your body. And so if you were creating a travel experience for someone like that, you might say, okay, if right now you have too much dry, light, cool in your life, maybe you need to go someplace that's warm and moist and where they like maybe have heavy, spicy foods because you need that like dense nourishment. And you need, maybe you would go to a place that has, you know, a wellness spa that has oil massages and steam baths because you just like really need to like rehydrate and soothe yourself. And so I was like, how great would that be? But maybe what that person loves going to like beaches and deserts, and they're going someplace else that's just going to like aggravate that cool, dry space for them, or they want to go somewhere arid all of a sudden. Or, and as you were talking too, like I heard you say you like to slow down and write and like you're doing all these grounding things. But if someone went and took a trip where they're really, really busy, they're also going to like aggravate that part of themselves that's out of balance. So it's just like another tool for looking at why you're traveling. And if you choose something that's going to kind of push you further out of balance, your travel might not heal you. Like if you're really looking for this, like, you know, people often say, I need this travel to like escape from my life or come back feeling rejuvenated. And if you pick all the things that aren't working for you, you might come home just needing a vacation from your vacation, which you'll hear people say a lot
Yes.
of times too. So this is what I'm just really curious about. And I know like that mental, physical, emotional journey, like we've talked about, is something you look at both in the terms of health coaching, but also travel coaching. So yeah, I'm so curious about from you, like if that sparks anything, or you see how you maybe already do that in the ways that you design travel.
Yeah, and I think that's so fascinating, like that perspective on it. It's just a different way to think about it. And I think that, many people can end up just sort of gravitating towards the type of trip that perhaps they're already out of balance with,
Mhm.
or like you were talking about the light, airy dosha, perhaps that person would gravitate towards a big, hiking hut to hut hiking trip, or is doing something that's like really active, but maybe they would benefit from something more grounding. So I find that really interesting.
I mean, I think that it's interesting how maybe if this is things that you are bringing into the design for your travelers, or you know what I guess maybe the better question here is, maybe people don't know what travel design is. Like we think about travel advisors or travel agents and tour operators, but like you, what I love so much about ExploreX is like travel design, I feel like means something a little different to you. So what does it mean to you literally, and then maybe in philosophically to ExploreX, and how is there room for some of these kinds of things to really take shape within what you create?
Yeah, so travel for me and how we do it at Explorer X is all how we can make it the most powerful experience for our clients, but also positive for the places that they are visiting. Like I said before, we go deep with our clients, and our first call is usually 90 minutes. And we so this is something that you may not really think about when it comes to a travel design experience. Is, we're not just looking at locations and budget and timeline. We're really trying to get to know our clients. We're looking at who they are. We're asking about past experiences, what they may be looking forward to or not looking forward to about travel, or about things coming up in their personal lives, any goals or intentions that they have. Um, Anything that they may want to have or feel at the end of this trip that they don't have or feel now, and um, how they want to look back on this trip 10 years from now. So we we have these long in-depth conversations to really get to know who these people are and what their vision is for what they want to get out of this, not just from, things they want to check off a bucket list standpoint, but just how they want to feel afterwards. It's very collaborative all along the way. We work with teams, trusted teams on the ground in very specific countries around the world. And we are looking for those that are willing to get creative with us. So we steer clear of cookie cutter style trips. And this is also part of the process that I enjoy so much is, based on what we learn from our clients, we can really customize something really unique for them and really exciting, that matches what they're hoping to get out of it and not anyone else. And that's what I really love about it. And again, we dive into the inner journey side of things as well with exercises and prompts along the way. And we have a little slogan at Explorer X. It's travel like a hero, and that's humble, engaged, resilient, and open-minded. And I think that's a really important kind of mantra or something to keep in mind. Travel is not always pretty. It can be messy sometimes, and just staying aligned with that and finding mindful moments throughout the trip and what we can learn from these experiences. It's all a part of it. It's all an important part of travel.
Yeah. And I want to share. So I had a really fun way of getting to work with Explorer X. So last year or this year, I guess it's still this year, you guys brought me on to interview some of your past guests because,
Yes.
You and Michael were like, okay, we'd love to hear what this travel really means to people, right? And for me, this is fun because I've been on the business side and like in all of these brainstorming sessions about like what could transformational travel be? How can we implement it? How can we talk about it? But like the best way to hear about it is from people who've experienced it, right?
Yeah.
And so I had like the best privilege ever of interviewing so many of your travelers. And it was so cool for me because I don't work for you. I just like am a groupie of the company. But like I obviously I really believe in the power of this type of travel. And to then get to connect with your travelers and hear them and like ask them about their view on how the design process went for them or what that first 90-minute interview felt like, what their experience was on the ground, seeing all of that planning unfold or understanding like if they really use some of these mindfulness prompts, how did that change their travel experience? And I have to say, it was just like the most beautiful privilege to step into their experience, to also witness how, sorry, watch, I'm getting choked up, right? Like how much this works, right? Some of the changes that this brought about in people's lives, like you said, they're huge. Like they really learned so much about themselves. They connected in a different way that they didn't expect. They trusted themselves in different ways. Like you guys have such a cool experience called Destination Unknown, which we can maybe talk just a little bit about. But like for me, this is the ultimate experience, both in terms of where the why is not important, right? Or the where is not important, the why is. They don't even know where they're going. You've spent all this time cultivating the why, and like at the last moment, they know the where. Like it's not even related to the experience until it's happening,
Yes.
which I think is beautiful. But then also, like how powerful this can be with this intention and just kind of like like you said, constantly kind of like giving you the opportunity to do a little bit more, and the people that said yes to that, like what that means. So
Yeah.
anyway, this was so cool. If there's other companies out here listening, like I would totally love to play with this, because I think it's really valuable for you guys to understand what that looks like. And also the biggest thing that I saw that I thought was so powerful is how seen each traveler felt, right? And I think honestly, that's all what we want in our human experience if we want to really get far out there.
Yeah.
And what this process allows for is you think you're buying a trip to Chile, but you are being seen and you're given a space to grow, and it's incredible. And that's what I like will get excited about all day long. And like, we can't just tell people like that's what we want to give them. They have to get there on their own. But like at the end of the day, once I saw this happening for these guests so many times, like it feels so easy to say that this is a valuable experience, and it's a really important experience in people's lives. And as travel professionals, we're shepherding this for our guests, whether they're traveling with ExploreX, with me, with whoever is creating these experiences. Like, we hold a lot of privilege in our hands to change people's lives. And I don't know that a lot of people are thinking about travel in that way, and they're not holding this space as sacred for their travelers. And the way that we put people in a destination with intentionality to not disrupt where they're traveling to is also really important. And I think that conversation is starting to happen a little bit. I just went on a huge, I don't even know where I am anymore, Robyn. But like, it's so good. That's why I can't even stay focused.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's just like it gives me chills to hear you talking about it. And like this is why I love what I do so much is hearing it's that moment when you get on a call with these clients when they get back from their trip and you hear just like you were doing with these interviews with our clients. It's like you hear about how this impacted them and changed their lives and what they learned and what they took away. And it's like that's why I do what I do. And just giving people the opportunity to have travel change them in ways they didn't think possible. Um, it's it's just a beautiful experience on both ends, and um, I yeah, I hope it's empowering for our clients. I hope they come back inspired, and I'm always inspired by them as well.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that, because I know I can feel that energy from you, especially, but that it isn't something that's taken lightly. And I know like that your guests have felt it, but I don't, I'm just curious, like in a broader sense of how many people feel that after their travel experience. So I'm going to have to play with that question
Yeah.
out here in the bigger tourism world. Um, well, we just have a few more minutes before we have to do our rapid fire questions. So I'm trying to think of like the one last thing that I would love to talk to you about, because there's too many. So here's one thing, and maybe this will lead us, I don't know where this will lead us. On your website, it says you are a self-described dream weaver. And I feel like, well, we've just talked about dream weaving maybe, but I want to know what that means to you.
Dream weaving. Yeah. So I was trying to come up with a kind of a catch-all phrase for what I am or trying to be. And I came up with dream weaver. So whether it's through travel or through health, I am helping my clients to create the trip of their dreams and or the lives of their dreams. And we are weaving together this blend of their vision, their values, their goals and aspirations. And we're kind of taking all of this together and weaving together this beautiful tapestry. And that is of their, their dreams coming true and fulfillment and empowerment. So that's kind of where that came from.
I love that so much because I think that is really resonant for me. I feel like the best of us, not the best is the wrong word, but there's this energy amongst people who are really our weavers, right? Like storytellers and connectors and people that want to show that connectedness and that depth and that, like you were saying at the very beginning, like when we travel, we see that connectedness. And I think some of us just are like really trying to pull those things together and create this tapestry in a really beautiful way. And again, I'm getting far out there again, but like I just think it's beautiful and I really relate to that. And I can just remember watching a show where like this woman was channeling this power to like weave the threads of the universe together to like find the ultimate truth. And I was like, that's it. That's what we're doing, right? Like we're like, how do I grab a hold of that truth and tie it to this one and like eventually bring this beautiful reality into existence? And I think like we're all really trying to just do our part to make that happen for as many people as we are lucky enough to touch in their own lives.
Yes, exactly. And the result is so unique to each one of them. It's just it's really special to be a part of it.
Yeah. Okay, so before we do our rapid fire really quick, this just made me laugh because I'm a fellow Montanan. You mentioned that there's a lot of people working remotely for ExploreX, so you're in Montana. And I also found just like across the street from my favorite bakery that I literally drive like 9 hours to get to when I'm driving home to visit my parents. So that's exciting. But when you're hiking, Robyn, and there's bears in the area, what is it that you say on the trail?
Hey bear.
And I laugh, and I really hope my friend Amy listens to this because she's my Montana hiking buddy, and we have spent so many hours on the trail, and ours is yo bear. So you will hear yo bear, yo bear, yo bear, yo, like, or some rendition of yo bear.
Oh my gosh. And that's funny because it turns into all sorts of different things. We end up talking to the bears, having conversations. Yeah. It turns into a whole thing.
It's one of those things, if you know, you know. And when I saw that, I was just dying laughing because I was like, I know exactly what that means.
Oh yeah.
And then you hit the like bear grass that's been rolled in and you're like, it doesn't really matter how loud I yell right now. I'm probably going to just turn around and head back home.
Yeah. You understand.
Okay, so here's the real rapid fire questions. What are you reading right now?
Oh, I'm reading My Invented Country by Isabel Allende. It's about her experience as a Chilean living in other countries.
She's a beautiful writer. Thank you for mentioning her. What is always in your suitcase or backpack when you travel?
Oh, I have to say, I love my water filter, my Grail water filter, which I don't always need, but when I do, it comes in really handy, and I just have that peace of mind.
Yeah, it's magic. And maybe when you don't want to populate your what did you say, your biomes so much with foreign
microbiome?
Microbiomes, yes. Sometimes we want a little filtration.
And then you don't have to buy all the plastic bottles and stuff.
Yes, absolutely. That's really the real reason. To sojourn is to travel somewhere as if you live there for a short while. Where is some place that you would still love to sojourn?
Oh gosh. I would still love to sojourn in, I would say, Central America. I've been to South America a number of times and not as much Central America. I'd love to kind of stay for a while and brush up on my Spanish. And
knowing you, I feel like Guatemala. That's just what I heard from the universe. So if you need to pick a place to start.
Okay. Thank you.
What do you eat that immediately connects you to a place you've been?
That connects me to a place that I've been. Um, it probably has to do with the spices involved. Um, or let's see, something specific. Anything rice and soy based takes me back to Japan every time. The food was amazing there. Yeah. So I would have to say, like, the condiments and the spices are what takes me back.
Yeah, I love that when you're traveling someplace new and seeing like what is the perfect like hot sauce or like spicy element or sour element.
Yes.
Who was a person that inspired or encouraged you to set out to travel the world?
Oh, I did mention this a little bit earlier, but my grandparents were probably the ones who initially inspired me. They would come back um, and bring these coins from their like leftover change from their trips, and they would give that to me, and I would look at those with such wonder about what these places were like and where this came from, and I still remember really cherishing those.
Yeah. If you could take an adventure with one person, fictional or real, alive or past, who would it be?
Oh gosh, hard questions. I would say, the first person that comes to mind is my dear friend, Whitney James, who's also in the travel industry, kind of in the marketing space. And her and I just have a blast no matter what we're doing together. So I would take her.
Yeah. And then the last question, I know who is one woman in the travel industry you admire and would love to take a moment to recognize in this space?
I would love to recognize Angel Namshali. She is the general manager of Dunya Camp in the Serengeti in Tanzania, which you may have heard about. So she runs this camp that is the only all-female staffed camp in Africa. And they're doing some really big things to get women involved out there.
Yeah, she's on my list for podcast guests I'd love to have on. So
yes.
Maybe you can make the intro because I would love to speak with her.
Wonderful.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I'm so proud of us. Like, we're actually pretty much on time here. I thought there's no way that was going to be humanly possible. And our path was not too winding. I really, really appreciate your time today and your connection in general. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Soul of Travel, presented by Journey Woman. I hope you enjoyed the journey. If you loved this conversation, I encourage you to subscribe and rate the podcast. Please share episodes that inspire you with others because this is how we extend the impact of this show. Learn more about each of my guests by reading our episode blogs, which are more than your average show notes. I think you'll love the connection. Find our episode blogs at www.souloftravelpodcast.com. I am so proud of the way these conversations are bringing together people from around the world. If this sounds like your community, welcome. I am so happy you are here. I am all about community and would love to connect. You can find me on Facebook at Soul of Travel Podcast or follow me on Instagram either at she.sojourns or at Soul of Travel Podcast. Stay up to date by joining the Soul of Travel Podcast mailing list. You'll also want to explore the Journey Woman community and its resources for women travelers over 50. I'd also like to share a quick thank you to my podcast producer and content magician, Carly Eduardo, CEO of Convergente. I look forward to getting to know you and hopefully hear your story.